Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fishin, a Merfolk Podcast, the show where we discuss merfolk in all formats to make each and every one of us better fish pilots. My name is Kody, and you can find me on Twitter as @NotCodySmith. And as always, we have my co-host Matt. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great tonight. Still getting over my cold, so if I'm a little phlegmy in the throat, forgive me. I'm doing my best to hold it together. But I'm ready to talk some merfolk, maybe a little goblins. Maybe a little zombies, horses perhaps. We'll see.
Unicorns for my wife.
Ooh, unicorns.
Unicorns. And you can find him on Matthew Caudill 8 on Twitter. You can find us on the show on all the social media as @FishcastMTG. And you can also we also have a YouTube channel that has associated videos, just fun stuff that we put up there every once in a while. You can also support us in various ways, like listening to the podcast, subscribing on any platform that you find us at, and rating us on the iTunes App Store or the podcast App Store, I guess it would be, or rating us on whatever platform you listen to us, or tell a friend, tell that Merfolk player at your store that there's a podcast for them.
If you acknowledge we exist, it's helpful.
Yes, and that's definitely helpful. Talking to us on Twitter, doing all that fun stuff. We love talking to everybody, so feel free to continue talking to us and sharing us with your Merfolk friends,
or just your magic friends, or your My Little Pony friends, your bronies, potentially your
shonies.
Or shonies.
Isn't that is that a female brony as a shoni?
What is this? Not breakfast. This is breakfast. Eggs, sausage, biscuits and gravy, pancakes and fruit. Over 29 items on our buffet. Shoney's, this is breakfast. And coming to Shoney's for lunch or dinner to try our new Dixie Tater Chips Value Baskets. 5 delicious sandwiches surrounded by mounds of Shoney's fresh homemade Dixie Tater Chips, starting at $4.99.
But I do want to do a little kind of state of the Patreon message here, because some things have kind of come to light about our Patreon tier levels, and I kind of want... the thing is like, you guys are giving us money to help make this show better, and I want to be 100% accountable to you all for like we're doing good stuff with this. We're not just wasting the money that you're investing in us.
I am wasting the money. Kody is not. I am wasting the money.
Everything is under my account information. He can't buy a grill out from under me, so it'll be okay.
I have talked to a pawn shop. They have taken my word as credit. I have a down payment on 1/10 of a 1/4 carat diamond for the grill. We're getting there.
It's slowly but surely. But so one of the tiers many of the tiers that we had prior to this, is to commentate on a video. Now, when I did my video with Joe, the Joe that I knew from my Hearthstone group, we ran into some problems, and a lot of it rotates around my computer being a Mac Mini and not having a lot of processing power. So really recording Merfolk gameplay and having somebody sharing my screen and Skyping someone in and recording all of that, my computer cannot handle it. It's just something that is technically not feasible at this point. So we're going to work on something else and we're going to discuss that here in a minute. The next thing is, we added ads to the Patreon feed, or to the podcast feed. So basically, if you listen to the end, there's an ad that runs, I believe, also at the beginning, and we make a pittance off of it, but it's better than no money. So that's something that we have implemented to help supplement our income, is these ads.
And realistically, I know I joke around a lot on the show, but I mean, this is not supplemental income by any means. Kody and I do not make any money off this show, off the Patreon. What little money that does come in so far does go right back in the show. We put this together with spit and duct tape at best. So because we are getting more listeners, which has been fantastic, has been really cool. But it's also one of those points where we need to start upping our game a little bit, which is the quality that we can put out. I'm literally using a Logitech webcam's microphone to record my volume. As Kody said, he's using a really old computer and trying to get enough processing power that we can just put something together. So anything you guys can do to help would be fantastic. We'd really appreciate it.
Yes, and I mean, we're using GarageBand to record. I'm using iMovie to edit the videos, which if anybody's ever used iMovie to edit videos, it's bare bones at best. I mean, it's fine, but there's just so much better out there. And so the one other thing that I wanted to discuss is we for a while had a goal to update our artwork, and that's still something that we want to do. But as Matt alluded to, we're going to be changing our primary Patreon goal to be getting Matt a higher quality microphone. So that's going to be the first thing that we put money into, and
real quick, I want to let you guys know that because my microphone is so, and we do this through Skype because I'm in San Antonio and Cody's somewhere back with
Oklahoma.
I have to get really close to the mic, so it probably looks like I'm trying to make out with Kody through the video the entire time we're talking, which for Kody must be very exciting, but for me is a little uncomfortable. So
that's kind of where we're at, and
help me make out with Kody less. That's all I'm asking.
So I mean, that's kind of where we're at, but I did want to discuss before we move on the new tiered levels that we have. So we have the same pricing structure. It's a monthly payment. So if you and I've changed up the names of the tiers. So if you donate $1 a month, it's the Kumena Speakers. You get a shout out on the show, and you get to pick a random Merfolk on an episode. You also get our unending gratitude, and that's for real. We love doing this. I know I look forward to recording every week, and I love doing it. And it would mean the world to us if you donate just $1. Like, that is amazing.
And I will clap for you because I love to clap.
Yes,
I love to clap, not the clap. Just to be crystal clear.
The next level is the Merfolk Branch Walkers. Donating $2 a month lets you get to submit a show topic that we discuss, both myself and Matt, and access to an RSS code that will have an ad-free version of the podcast.
So Kody prefers real topics, but if you can throw the most random
carp
at us that we actually have to research, or where we just jerk around the entire time, that'd be fantastic too.
And the only thing that we would need from that is your email on top of all that. So that way we could send you the link to that. Plus you get all the previous things, the ad-free RSS feed, all that fun stuff.
And if you do that and you add something to the notes, just kind of ping me through Twitter. Say, Matt, actually read the show notes this week. And I might actually read the show notes and see what you wrote.
Yeah, and we'll work it out where you have a specific color that you type in, or you put your name around it or something like that. The next and final level is Tishana, Voice of Thunder. It's $10 a month, but you get to be on the show. You get to come up with a topic, and we'll work with you to record an episode. Plus, you get all the previous tiers.
Yeah, I mean, you get to hang out with us. I mean, if that's not worth $10, I mean, there's a lot of other things that are worth $10, but come on, we need help.
Yeah, and if spending an hour or two with us on a Monday night isn't your idea of a blast on Monday night, I don't know what is.
That's true. Kody buys beer, so
I can't ship beer though. That's kind of the downside.
So what Kody says, if you donate the $10, you can come to his house and hang out with him and his wife.
Sure, I'm sure my wife wouldn't mind that.
So if you donate,
you have to pay for the ticket to Oklahoma though.
Yeah, exactly. And if you donate $20 a month, I will give you the routing number to Cody's bank account.
Very funny, very funny.
Hey everybody, Zuby here to tell you about my Magic the Gathering podcast, Magic with Zuby. Magic with Zuby is a podcast all about the Magic the Gathering card game. We talk about the latest news and events, the latest cards in decks. We bring on guests from pro players to content creators and more. Join me each week as we keep discovering why Magic the Gathering is the best card game around.
So we're gonna go into with all of that behind us. We're gonna go into the random Merfolk card.
Ooh, fancy.
So this is actually the first time that we've had a random Merfolk that was not a Merfolk. In fact, this is an instant from Ixalan. And this is random Merfolk number 138. It was chosen by at MJEEIN, Gene, I guess? M_Gene on Twitter. And Matt, could you read River Herald's Boon for us?
All right. River Herald's Boon. 1 green and 1 of anything for an instant. Put a 1/1 counter on target creature and a 1/1 counter on 1 target Merfolk. Wait a second. Does that mean if you put the 1/1 counter on a Merfolk, you can put an additional 1/1 counter on that Merfolk?
Yes, and it also means you can
two
target.
counters.
Yeah, you can put 2 1/1 counters on the same creature. You could also technically put a counter on an opponent's Merfolk because it just says target Merfolk. It doesn't specify target Merfolk you control.
Or if you're playing Two-Headed Giant.
Yep, you could put it on your teammates, your buddies, whatever random Merfolk they've got laying around. But I mean, this is fine as a common.
All I can see in this card is that frog in the top left-hand corner is like banging. Like, I can't see who the artist is. I apologize. Maybe Kody can tell me. But he put a lot of time in that frog. I mean, it stands out.
For all you MTG frog enthusiasts.
For your frog tribal. For your Gertog frog tribal decks. Gitrog.
Alex Konstad did a really cool frog in the back of this art.
Well, not many people know this, but Alex Konstad is a frog enthusiast. He has a collection of 85 different poison dart frogs, all different colors. He calls it the Crayola box of death.
But I mean, I honestly think that this could be good in a pauper deck because in a pauper Merfolk deck because if you're hear me out. In a Merfolk,
I'm making faces right now because I can't see it, but go ahead.
In a Merfolk pauper deck, there aren't enough Merfolk to build like a completely profitable Merfolk deck. So if you were to take the good Merfolk, then you could still put a +1/+1 counter on something that wasn't a Merfolk, like maybe Mold Drifter or I'm trying to think of a big green thing, like Hooting Mandrills. You know, if you were going the way to mill yourself and then delve things back into play, like I think that might be cool.
Yeah, I literally just pulled out my pauper deck because I play Green Stompy. What could we play that would be better? Vines of the Vastwood. We could play Hunger of the Howlpack. I mean, Groundswell. There's so many more better cards than that for pauper.
Well, I'm just trying to find a use for this. I'm not.
I know you're reaching. I appreciate it. We found the use. It's in the Gitrog. Tribal deck.
It's in your Frog Commander tribal deck for your for whatever random Merfolk that you're putting in your deck for almost no value. But that's pretty much it.
Now, Kody, we've been talking about tribal a lot lately, haven't we?
We talk about tribal every episode.
I hate you. Let me segue. So, Kody, we've been talking about tribal a lot lately, haven't we?
Oh, we have.
Yes. So, the topic tonight that we are actually really excited to talk about is tribal. Now, if you're asking yourselves, what have you guys been doing these last couple episodes? Because isn't this a tribal-themed podcast? Well, you would think so. And it is. But we're going to talk about tribal when it comes to Commander. or as I like to call it, because I'm old as dirt, not as old as Joe Burr, but still pretty dang old.
I thought you were as old as fossils, and he was as old as dinosaurs, which are older than fossils.
That's right. I am old as fossils. I appreciate that.
That's a callback. It rewards listeners for having listened in the past. That's what I learned from my one stand-up comedy class. Callbacks.
Oh, I love how me and you are the only ones who find that funny. So anyway, what were we talking about?
We're getting into the main topic, which is commander decks, tribal decks in Commander. All right. So what we're gonna generally talk about is we're both big Commander players, and so what we're doing here is we're gonna talk about guidelines for building a good tribal Commander deck. And what we're going to do is, I mean, this could really be applied to any format, really. I mean, building a tribal deck. But we're going to use Merfolk as kind of our example as we're leading through this. Because Merfolk is, I mean, tribal decks are pretty big in Magic, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Tribal decks have been played since the beginning of Magic. If you remember correctly, for people as old as fossils as myself, we had Goblin King, Elvish Champion, Zombie Master, who weren't even actual zombies or goblins back in the day. They were just lords, and they got eroded later. But it was designed to have a kind of a tribal theme even from the very beginning, and it's actually just grown. And tribal is just a great way for beginners to get into Magic. It's a great way to quickly build a deck, but it's also a great way to win because some of the most powerful decks in Magic's history are tribal.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said there. And I mean, even our very own Lord of Atlantis has been around since Alpha. It's one of those things that's ingrained in the system. You know,
Did I miss one? Did I miss the Lord of Atlantis?
You missed the Lord of Atlantis.
Wow. Was that intentional?
It might have been.
It wasn't. I just got that one.
Well, so anyway, like I said, these general guidelines can be applied to pretty much any format. And I kind of broke down these tiers based off of a video that MTG Goldfish did right before Ixalan came out. And these were kind of just general tips for building a a tribal deck in Standard or Modern. And we're going to kind of just expand it to Commander where, you know, you have a little bit less consistency than you would have in, say, a Modern deck where you can have 4 of every card.
Sure. And so in Legacy, Tribal's alive and well there. Obviously, there's Legacy Merfolk. There's Legacy Goblins, which comes and goes and was once upon a time one of the most powerful decks there was until the banning of Goblin Recruiter, if I remember correctly. Is that the right card that got banned out? I believe it was.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll edit it if it was wrong.
Okay, appreciate it. But then you also have the new Soldier Stompy deck that's doing really well in Legacy right now. But and you have your modern Legacy decks, which are going to be your humans, your Merfolk, obviously. Goblins kind of are there, but they're not very good. So, I mean, you have some really strong strategies, but a lot of these strategies, and elves in both Legacy and Modern. How can I forget that? But all these strategies usually involve just going wide as fast as possible for the most part. So in Commander, though, there's a little bit more that you can do besides going wide and going fast, which is why I think Commander is a better way to look at this.
Yeah, and in Commander, you kind of have a wider breadth of cards that you can look at. I mean, number one, it's an Eternal format, so you can go back to, besides the very small ban list, you can go back through Magic's history, you know, completely and entirely. You know, even as far as cards that came out as soon as Dominaria, you know, like the newest set, you can slot in cards in your Commander deck and be cool. And I mean, this kind of piggybacks well on Last year's commander set was all tribal, and then we've basically had all of Ixalan block that was super tribal. And even in Dominaria, there's some pretty sweet tribal cards that we can pick up.
And that's one of the cool things that's been going on since the dawn of Magic is that every block that comes out, there's going to be somewhat of a tribal theme. It might not be as prominent as you see in Ixalan or Lorwyn, but I mean, even in Almond-Cat, there was the zombie tribe. In Rise of the Eldrazi and Battle for Zendikar, you had obviously all the Eldrazi cards. In the cons, you had the dragons and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, tribes are always there. Whether they're good or not is a different question.
Yeah, that's definitely something to consider.
Because tribal really hasn't been that great in a standard format in quite a while.
Yeah, basically until this setup, until Ixalan. So before we get into the actual cards, we're going to talk about lands in Commander. And so my rule, and I'm going to share my rule, which is actually what has been kind of deemed on Commanderin, which is a Commander podcast, as Plorg's rule. And he was Mr. Plorg was one of the original hosts of Commanderin, and his rule is one that I follow as kind of a baseline for all decks. And this isn't saying that you have to live and die by this rule, but it's a good starting point for any Commander deck. And for that, you start with 30 lands. As a baseline, you will never run less than 30, generally speaking.
Now, that's 30 lands, not counting mana rocks, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So then you add however many colors your deck is. So let's say we're talking about a Kamena deck, a Kamena Tyrant of Erazka. So because it's a 2-color deck, we're going to add 2 to that number. So we're at 32. Then you add your commander's CMC, which in our case is 3. So that puts our total land count to 35. And basically, when I'm building a deck, that's generally what I do, is I'll compute that number, and that's just a good starting point. That's not saying that's the end all, that you should only run those lands, and but that is a way that I like to start building my deck and reserve those spots for lands.
Now, Kody, real quick, you have played a few commander decks in your past, haven't you? Or a few tribal decks in your past, haven't you?
Oh yeah, I've played a lot of. I actually had a tribal cube for some time. I've played Legacy Soldiers. I've played Legacy Merfolk. In Commander, I've had soldiers. I've had tree folk, zombies. I had the cleric tribal deck, which was Shadowborn Apostles. So
I've allies.
Yeah, I've had allies. I've run a lot of tribal decks in my time.
Kody loves his tribal, is kind of what we're getting at.
Yeah. So I just wanted to briefly highlight 3 lands that are good in any tribal deck.
And real quick, I've played one tribal EDH deck.
What's that?
Scarecrows.
Oh, right. You had that Scarecrow deck.
Reaper King. Loved it. And then I played against Kody and 2 other people, but all playing Aura Shards at the same time, and it ruined me. I immediately ripped that deck apart.
Aura Shards is a powerful Magic card. So there's 3 cards that I want to highlight in Commander that I think, or actually, let's do 4. There's 4 that I want to highlight for playing in Commander. So the first is Cavern of Souls, which is getting a little pricey. So if you have it, then good, run it. And Cavern of Souls, it enters, you choose a creature type, and it makes those creatures uncounterable, which is kind of a big deal in Commander, I think.
I tend to disagree. You see, in 1v1 Commander, sure, but in Group Commander, counterspells are much less powerful. Most decks, even if they're running blue, are only going to have a couple counterspells, so I don't see it as a end-all, be-all. In Group Commander, they're probably not going to be countering the tribal players' cards. They're probably going to be countering the big broken combo piece that somebody else is playing. So, again, if you have it and you want to throw it in there, throw it in there. It doesn't hurt. It mana fixes, but it's not going to make or break you by any means.
And the other point I was going to make was the more colors you are, the better it gets. So
Yeah.
like if you're playing like Allies, which is a 5-color deck with General Tazri or something along those lines, or even just like Jund Dragons or something like that, the more colors, the better. The next one is kind of the budget Cavern of Souls Unclaimed Territory. Just came out in Ixalan, and it just taps. You choose a creature type when it enters, and you can just make it tap for any color of that creature type. The next one is Mutavault, which I think is less relevant in Commander than it is in Modern. But it is just kind of a unique effect. If you have a bunch of lords, you can just kind of make an extra dude, and it evades instant speed removal, so it's good in that fashion.
So I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on this one. I think Mutavault is more important than Cavern of Souls in Commander, mainly because most Commander decks that we're going to be talking about are going to be going wide and are going to be based on having as many possible of the certain tribe that you're going to have. And we'll use Merfolk as an example because we're a Merfolk podcast, for God's sakes. But it evades Wrath of God. It evades board wipes. So you always have a Merfolk or a Soldier or a Scarecrow or a Unicorn in the wings ready to go. And because you're probably not going to be going for the big swing, you're going to be chipping away for the most part. 2 points of damage can really add up, especially when you're swinging 6, 5, 4 every turn.
Yeah, so that's definitely something that's important to consider. It adds another body, and like Matt said, when you have a lot of creatures and you have a lot of lords and you have a lot of ways to pump your creatures, having that extra body can definitely be the difference between winning and letting your opponent have another turn.
And after Wrath of God, you always have another body still sitting there.
And the last card I want to specifically discuss is Path of Ancestry. It was in the Commander precons this year, the tribal ones. It enters the battlefield tapped, and you tap to add to your mana pool 1 mana of any color that's in your commander's color identity. When the mana is spent to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with your commander, scry 1.
It's super neat.
Pretty dumb. I mean, it enters tapped, which is basically the only downside to it. It's basically a 5-color deck to cast all your creatures. It's a 5-color spell, or it's a 5-color land to cast your creatures, and it lets you scry most turns. Like, that's pretty good.
So I would say this card is. I think this card is super good in tribal, and it's an auto include. Especially, it's like a 250 card. It's super cheap to buy. I would say that it's less powerful in a Merfolk deck though, because in blue you have so many scry effects already. But it's still really, really good. But if you're playing something like Zombies, where it's like mono black, or something that's out of the scry colors, and you have something that allows you to scry multiple times, that's just bonkers.
Goblins comes to mind.
Yeah, Goblins
Yeah.
is neat. That deck sucks. It's so awful to play against.
So the first category that we're going to look at besides the lands is, and again, these I got from the video that Seth did on MTG Goldfish about building commander decks, building tribal decks rather. The first is figure out your tribe's competitive advantage. And so basically what this means is like, what does your tribe want to do? So like, if I were to say, Matt, like that you wanted to build a dinosaur deck in Commander, what do dinosaurs want to do?
They want to trample.
They want to trample. They want to ramp because a lot of the dinosaurs that are like top end are super expensive.
Yeah.
So you want to figure out how to build to your deck's strengths and minimize their weaknesses. And we're going to talk about tribal weaknesses soon, but just working towards the strengths.
Sure. And I think that's one of the things that I want to clarify, because I've been saying a lot of tribal decks go wide, they go wide, they go wide. But that's most of the traditional ones, like Merfolk, like Goblins, like Elves, because their CMC is usually pretty low, 1, 2, 3, go. But there are the mid-tier tribes, like Zombies are usually a CMC of 3, 4, 5, somewhere around there. And then you have your upper-tier tribes like Dragons, which is actually a very popular tribe, or dinosaurs, as you explained, where even though you're playing a tribal deck, you're not going to be going wide with those decks. You're going to be playing giant creatures and trying to smash face with one or two things at a time.
Yeah, so like you said, it's not always go wide. You definitely need to play to your strengths. So some things that I put down for Merfolk is, Merfolk can go wide, but it can also kind of stack up because there's lots of lords. And also recently there have been lots of effects that put +1/+1 counters on your creatures. So in a deck that goes wide, you might want to focus more on lords and pump effects. But in a deck that goes tall, you might want to, put in cards like Asceticism that protect your creatures because, they're the only ones you got. You need to build up.
Mm-hmm.
Another effect that Merfolk kind of have over other tribes is unblockability or island walk effects. Because there's lots of ways to make other lands islands, and blue is, to be honest, one of the most played colors in all of Magic, but also in Commander. So sometimes it's not unreasonable to just have natural island walk.
More often than not, you're going to. The most powerful and most fun thing to do in Magic Gathering in general is to draw cards. Blue draws cards. In Commander, it's 100-card singleton. You need to draw cards. So a lot of people play blue.
A couple cards I want to highlight in this vein are Quicksilver Fountain, which is an artifact for 3. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player puts a flood counter on target non-island land he or she controls. That land is an island as long as it has a flood counter on it. At end of turn, if all lands in play are islands, remove all flood counters from them. So it forces your opponents to turn their lands into islands and gives you island walk. And honestly, it doesn't hurt you as much as it hurts them. Another card that is kind of a unique card to Merfolk that kind of takes advantage of Island Walk is Thada Adel Acquisitor. She's 1 blue for a legendary Merfolk rogue and she's 2/2. That doesn't matter. She has Island Walk, and she says whenever Thada Adel Acquisitor deals combat damage to a player, search that player's library for an artifact card and exile it. Then that player shuffles his or her library. Until end of turn, you may play that card. That is an excellent way to take advantage of Island Walk or unblockable effects.
Oh, she's absolutely bonkers. And a lot of times your opponents are going to be playing some stupid artifacts in their decks. So you can just take them out and make them yours. If you need a mana ramp, you can always just grab a Gilded Lotus. You can grab, what broken artifact isn't there in Commander?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff. I mean, just getting a Soul Ring.
Paradox Engine, Rings of Brytheart. I'm literally Helm of Obedience. I'm scanning through one of my Commander decks right now. Mana Crypt. I mean,
just like I said, just Soul Ring. Soul Ring is worth it. Yeah. A Signet, like basically any sort of ramp is good enough.
But and not just that, but like a lot of people play a lot of broken combos with artifacts, so you can really kind of see what's going on in their deck, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, you can't have this.
Yeah, and I mean, you don't even have to play it. So like, if you get to look through their deck. So if you look through their deck and you see Rings of Brighthearth and something like Basalt Monolith or something along those lines, you could just go,
nope.
No, that's going to be hard to deal with. You can't have Rings of Brighthearth. And it just gets exiled and you don't have to play it yourself. It's just gone. So next section is density of tribe members. So this is kind of a dual purpose slot here. So number one is, you want to focus on creatures of that tribe. So if you're in a Merfolk deck, you would prefer Merfolk. If you're in a Goblin deck, you would definitely try to focus more on Goblins. But this doesn't limit yourself to the creatures. This also can be creatures that support that archetype, things like Adaptive Automaton or Metallic Mimic, that really, really well support a tribal mechanic.
Oh, absolutely. Another one that I like to put in pretty much every deck is Sad Robot. Even though he's not tribal, he draws cards and he mana ramps. So essentially, he's a sorcery, 2 sorcery cards on a body that you can just chump block with.
Yeah, Sad Robot is definitely something you want to put in almost every commander deck. The example that I have listed is, and this is kind of leaning in towards, you might play cards that are less powerful in a vacuum, but they're standing on their own. Like if you were to evaluate two cards
By the
next.
way, real quick, just for the one person who doesn't know who Sad Robot is, that's Solemn Simulacrum.
Oh right, I apologize. Yes, Solemn Simulacrum is super busted in Commander, super good.
But just call him Sad Robot. That's who he is.
Yeah, he's the saddest robot. But so like picking a card, picking between two cards, where one might be technically better, but one is preferred because it's either A, in your tribe, or B, supports that sort of tribal synergy. For my example, I put here Seafloor Oracle, which is a Merfolk wizard for 2 blue, and he's a 2/3. Whenever a Merfolk you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Now that's a pretty good effect, but the card that I have side by side with it is Coastal Piracy, which is 2 blue. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. Now, in a deck that I would build, I might run both of these effects, but you might lean towards running the creature because A, it does a similar effect, and B, it adds to putting a bunch of dudes on the table, which is what you want to do in a tribal deck, and it neatly synergizes with the deck. And Matt didn't protest me on that, so I think we can move. We can keep moving on.
I know it's amazing, but I agree with you.
Yeah, sometimes it happens. But this doesn't mean that you simply jam every Merfolk into your deck. Like you're not gonna run Jade Bearer. Like we're not doing that just because it's a Merfolk.
Just to say, you can if you want to. There's lots of times when I'm building a deck that I put a bad card in there just for the lulz. So if you want to put it in there for the lulz, go for it, because I respect that.
That's true. And my example is Rhystic Study is just a good card. Like you're not going to not put in Rhystic Study if you have one.
When I play red, I play Squee.
Yeah.
Why? Because I love Squee.
But so for my example for this methodology,
And he dies to skull again.
What's
and
that?
again. And Squee dies to skull clamp again and again.
Yeah, it's good
again,
card draw.
And again.
So my example for not jamming every creature that's a Merfolk is in my Brawl deck, which we'll discuss in another episode coming up. I went with a plus
We're playing
1/+1.
Brawl, you monster.
No, Brawl.
I heard you. Stop playing Brawl. No one likes that guy.
I'm not playing Brawl.
He's really Brawl.
Yes, he is Brawl. So I'm playing a creature named Ridgescale Tusker, which is 3 green for a 5/5 beast. And when Ridgescale Tusker enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Now, this is kind of limited to the standard card pool, and so it's something that just puts a counter on everything, which is super powerful in Brawl, in the vein of the deck that I want to build. And there's probably is a better version in Commander, but that's just kind of an example of like, you don't just have to only play Merfolk. You can play other creatures that help synergize with your game plan.
No, absolutely. So, I mean, it's one of those things. You have to have a good balance. You want to have the majority be your tribe, but you can have some support in there as well. But when you start getting close to what the 40, 60, 30, 70%, that's when you're probably need to start putting more of your tribe in there, because it is a tribal deck.
Yeah, and that's where the focus should be. And the third section in our little guide here is look for free in quotes utility spells. So these are spells that may or may not be tribal in their nature, but they're cards that help. So one of the cards, like we already said, was Coastal Piracy, is just kind of a good card in blue creature decks. So that's something that would be good in Merfolk. Some other examples are spells that add to your creature density while providing some other effect. So like Bitter Blossom, which is 1 and a black for a tribal enchantment that adds a fairy at the beginning of your upkeep at the cost of a life, or Dark Salvation, which is XX black for a sorcery. Target player puts X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield. Then up to one target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn for each zombie that player controls. And so that's kind of one of those things where it's also a removal spell. You know what I mean? And that's double utility. You get a spell and you get extra creatures. This also extends into lands. So I mean, we obviously talked about a few lands, and I think there's only there's like Ancient Ziggurat, which you can tap to add a mana for any creature that you cast. That it taps for any color to cast a creature, or Wanderwine Hub, which is the tribal Merfolk land, which comes into play untapped as long as you reveal a Merfolk. There's ways to kind of use the slots that are already in your deck to your advantage in this tribal scenario.
So one thing that I do want to bring up that's near and dear to my heart are the support artifacts. And I know you don't have that on the show notes, so I'm going to kind of go rogue on you a little bit. But one of the most bread and butter cards that you ever want to play in Commander, especially if you're playing Tribal, is Coat of Arms.
Yes,
so
it's so good.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing Tribal, you jam a Coat of Arms in there. You have to. So Coat of Arms, each creature gets +1/+1 for each additional creature type that shares a type with it. So if you're playing Merfolk and you have 3 Merfolk on the battlefield, they each get +2/+2. If you have 4 Merfolk on the battlefield, they each get +3/+3, and so on and so forth, which gets out of control very, very quickly. There's a few other ones that are very similar to that. You have Vanquisher's Banner. Enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creature that you control of the chosen type get +1/+1. Whenever you cast a creature spell of the chosen type, you get to draw a card, which is just awesome. You have Stoneforge Masterwork, which was from Oath of the Gatewatch, which equipped a creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control that shares a creature type with it. One of the biggest downfalls to playing Tribal is board wipes, because you need to have your creature on the battlefield. So you can play Eldrazi Monument. Creatures you control have 1/+1 flying and indestructible. Indestructible being the key piece to that, especially because a lot of times you're going wider. So you can just sack little tokens here or there. Because the downfall to it is at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature if you can't sacrifice Eldrazi Monument. But I mean, there's tons of them. There's Cryptic Gateway. Tap 2 untap creatures you control. You may put a creature card from your hand to play that shares a creature type with a creature tapped this way. So if you're just drawing tons of Merfolk, but then you can just tap the ones that you just put into play to keep just throwing things on the battlefield. Door of Destinies. As Door of Destinies enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Whenever you cast a creature of the chosen type, put a charge counter on Door of Destinies. Creatures you control the chosen type get 1/+1 for each charge counter on Door of Destinies. There's a ton. I'm skipping over a lot of ones that I want to mention just because just time constraints. But there's a ton of support artifacts.
There's also in the most recent set, there was the most recent Commander precons. There was the Kindred cycle. So like Kindred Discovery is 3 blue for an enchantment. As Kindred Discovery enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Whenever a creature you control of the chosen type enters the battlefield or attacks, draw a card.
So there's one I want to bring up. It's so bad, but I would put it in for the lulz. It's called Doom Cannon. It's from what's this? I'm drawing a blank on the set name. It's the one that the original fetches are from. But anyway, Onslaught. Thank you. Enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. It's 6 mana. When it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Tap 3 and tap it to sacrifice a creature, the chosen type. It deals 3 damage to target creature or player. I would just play that for the lulz, because you're just throwing Merfolk in the Doom Cannon and just blasting at people.
Yeah. So before we go here, we want to discuss some of the. We've talked a lot about the plus side of playing Merfolk. I mean, playing tribal decks. So I know Matt, as the resident non-tribal player, you do have. I mean, you can bring up some good points about downsides to playing creature-based tribal decks.
Sure, and I've kind of mentioned a few of them throughout the conversation tonight. One is that they're very glass cannon because more often than not, you're going wide or you're playing one really tall creature. The problem is that the easiest thing to destroy in Magic are creatures. So, a Wrath of God can really just end your night. Uh, Also, I mean, even if you're going wide or going tall, you're trying to kill your opponent with damage. And usually it's not going to be in one mighty swing. So if that's the case, a lot of people in Commander play a lot of combo. And more often than not, you're not going to be comboing, again, unless you're playing elves or goblins. But that kind of gets to my next point. Most tribal decks are very linear as they are playing very aggro, or you're playing like super combo elves or goblins. So it can get kind of boring. Unless you're like Kody and you absolutely love tribal no matter what, but the gameplay is going to be very, very similar each game. You're trying to dump as many things on the battlefield as quickly as you can, and trying to go as wide or as tall as you can and get through.
Yeah, and that's kind of why it's good for it can be good for new players. It reduces complexity. But I mean, if that's your jam, that's your jam. Play tribal artificers, do it. Play what you love. We're not here to put our yuck in your yum. It's just
No. Again, and I mean, I'm building because of Rat Colony and Dominaria. I'm building tribal rats. I've been wanting to build a Relentless Rats deck for years, but I wasn't going to pay like $3 a piece for 30 Relentless Rats. But now that it's at Rat Colony is a common, I'm doing it.
Yeah, and do what you love. It's Magic, so play what you love.
Absolutely.
So that was our little chat about Commander Tribal and Tribal Merfolk and Commander in general. I mean, do you have anything to add, Matt, before we get out of here?
No, I mean, have fun, play tribal. Don't play Krinko because he's awful and you'll have no friends afterwards.
You'll either win super quick or you'll die a slow, painful death.
No, you'll either win super quick or you'll lose being the arch enemy.
Yeah,
because it'll be a 3-on-1 game as soon as everybody sees him.
A game that doesn't have the courtesy to end fast enough.
Yeah, if you haven't seen the Krinko deck, it's probably the most broken of the Commander or the tribal decks.
I'd say so.
Either him or Rice, the elf token generator.
Yeah, Reese the Redeemed.
The two tribal that I can think of. But even Reese doesn't bother me that much. But Krinko is just a nightmare to play against.
Yeah. So remember, you can contact us on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook as @FishCastMTG. You can also find us on YouTube there. We are not Kody Smith on Twitter, and Matt is @MatthewCotto8. If you have a longer form question, feel free to email us at fishcastmtg@gmail.com. Our cover art was made by Tessa and Hunter Pruitt. And if you like what we're doing here, please remember to rate or subscribe in the Apple Podcasts app or wherever you find your podcasts. And you could also find us at patreon.com/fishcastmtg to support us monetarily if you feel that is something that would benefit your life in a meaningful way.
And guys, out there in the Twitterverse, in the Facebookverse, whatever, let us know about your tribal decks. What are some of the key cards you like playing that we didn't mention tonight? What are some of the tribal decks that we didn't mention? Who's playing a tribal fungus deck? Who's playing tribal horses? What's your dream tribal deck? What tribe do you want to build that doesn't have a lord yet so we can yell at wizards, give us this lord? Let us know. I'm really curious to hear.
Yeah, so definitely tell us and get to us publicly on Twitter, because when you tell us, you're telling other people, and people can hear about it, and maybe they'll find something that they didn't know about. There's lots of stuff that we didn't touch on just due to time constraints, and help out your fellow tribal players. So that looks like a good place to end it. We're glad to do this, and we had a lot of fun recording. So thank you very much for joining us this week.